Two quick things I should note before we get to our next report. First of all, the city of St. Pete is warning those of you who are in the storm's path to please conserve your water. No laundry, no dishwashing. They're going to need that clean, potable water in case water supplies are interrupted by the storm. Secondly, price gouging is always an issue with storms like this. And Florida's Attorney General activated a hotline. It's 866-9-NO-SCAM. Price gouging for gasoline, for food, water, supplies is illegal in the state of Florida. If you catch it, you can report it. 866-966-7226. It's 866-9-NO-SCAM to report price gouging in Florida. Well, soon we will be watching Florida recover from Hurricane Ian. Cuba's recovering now, with people starting to get power back. Last night, Ian knocked out electricity across the island. It made landfall as a Category 3 storm, and Cuban state media is reporting at least 2 deaths. There was significant damage on the west side of the island around the province of Pinar del Rio. It's home to the tobacco farms that supply Cuba's renowned cigar industry. NBC's Guad Venegas is there and joins us now with more on Cuba's recovery. Guad, how is it going there tonight?
Josh, well, some parts of the province of Pinar del Rio are just total destruction. So we have spent our time in Cuba between Havana, the capital, and Pinar del Rio. So we just came back to Havana. By the way, there's reports that the power is coming back to parts of Havana. We just drove into Havana as the sun was settling, and it just looks dark. We've seen...
Espera. No digo nada. Ok, 3, 2, 1. Bueno, como ustedes saben, el huracán, que ya tenemos la tercera emisión de hoy, las 4 emisiones de hoy, del huracán Ian. Acá Brunito nos va a decir qué está sucediendo ahora. Adelante.
Hola chicos, como saben, el huracán llegó a la Florida y está en Sarasota y estaba en Naples, mucho viento. Y sí, esta noche va a haber una tormenta,
sí,
como toda esta semana, entonces prepárense.
Claro, por supuesto. Como ustedes saben, esta noche habrá un huracán nuevo y va a llover tanto. Miremos el news. Como ustedes saben, acá tengo el news en NBC News. Miren esto.
To put on a roof again and be able to sleep there. So that's the situation that a lot of the people in Western Cuba are in right now. Now, there's 11 provinces, there's 11 municipalities in this province, the most affected. And just so you have an idea, Josh, we got preliminary numbers from one of them, Viñales. This is a municipality inside of the province of Pinar del Rio of about 29,000 people. The numbers from the state say, preliminary numbers, that 48% of the homes of 29,000 people were affected. So half of the people are in homes that were affected. They're telling us that 90 tons of food were destroyed, produce food. We're talking rice, beans. Mind you, this is a part of the country where a lot of the agriculture takes place. And in a place like Cuba, where there's a shortage in food, it's very meaningful to lose 90 tons of food. They also tell us that 25,000 chickens were affected, 40,000 eggs destroyed. I mean, these are the essential food items that Cubans rely on a day-to-day. So as we were there and we talked to people, a lot of those that lost their homes told us, I don't know what I'm going to eat tonight, and I don't know where I'm going to get water from. So this is what's happening right now in Pinar del Rio as people try to recover from this hurricane, Josh.
Thank you, Guad. That's NBC's Guad Venegas with the latest on the recovery from Hurricane Ian in Cuba. Let's get some more context on Ian from an authority on hurricanes. Stephen Leatherman is a professor of Earth and Environment at Florida International University. Professor, welcome. It's good to see you again.
My pleasure.
What do you make of Hurricane Ian so far, both in the context of what we expected from this hurricane season and the way that Florida's climate has been changing over time?
As you know, they've been just a few miles an hour higher, so it was a large 4. And the other thing is, rarely do we see these hurricanes coming ashore on the southwest coast of Florida. In fact, when it was announced at first, or predicted at first, it was going to go to Tampa, it was said, well, this would be, a 1 in a 100-year event if it hit Tampa with this size, and it would have been. But interesting enough, the steering currents, as you know, hurricanes are like spinning tops, and you need something to push them along. And in this case, we had some rather unusual situations, the way the jet stream had bowed down off of North Florida and sort of guided it up. And then you had the Bermuda high pressure cell offshore. But at any rate, it was a rather unusual path. And of course, we found out it didn't go to Tampa at all. It went into very far south into Cayo Costa, which is around Fort Myers.
What does that term even mean? I was having this conversation today about a 1 in a 100-year storm event. It almost feels like our definitions for what that is are shifting for an array of reasons, not the least of which being climate change. Do we need to rethink the way we look at hurricanes like Ian?
Well, we probably do. We are seeing warmer sea, as the Earth warms up and the hurricanes get their energy from the top 100 meters of the surface water in the oceans. As they heat up and get warmer, we are going to see more energy available. And so, we can expect slightly stronger storms. And some people say, well, only slightly stronger. What's the problem? Well, you have to realize the wind damage is proportional to the wind speed to the third power. So a little bit bigger hurricane in terms of wind speed is a lot more damage.
Before I have to let you go, Professor, what about the coastal erosion that may come from Ian? A lot of the cities that are affected by this, Port Charlotte, Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Punta Gorda, and others, sit right along rivers, the Peace River, the Caloosahatchee River, and others. How much do we have to think about the future of these coastlines after a storm like this before we go?
Well, I think we're most concerned,
Seguimos acá de nuevo en nuestro noticiero de acá. Esta es la cuarta edición de hoy. Y bueno, ¿por qué estamos acá? Porque todavía sigue el huracán Ian. Porque ahorita mismo, acá estoy con Bruno siempre, y Brunito nos va a explicar qué está pasando ahora. Adelante.
Ok, a las 9 en 10 minutos va a empezar una tormenta. Y va a ser como muy scary y todo eso. No vamos a dormir bien nadie.
Edwin.
Entonces, chicos, en ventanas cerradas. Y pónganse pijamas como con mangas largas.
¿Con quién?
Con mangas largas, así estén como warm para la noche.
Sí, como
así no
ustedes...
les da frío.
Claro. Como ustedes saben, la tormenta va a venir en 10 minutos a las 9 de la noche. Así que no sé si los de Mega van a ser vivo ni directo, no sé. Y entonces, vamos a ver el clima. Acá está un video que yo les dejé hace un rato. Después, a las 2, después del programa, va a decir qué tenemos que hacer. O sea, ponemos el video.
No, dicen... todavía está.
Bueno, ¿ponemos el video? ¿Qué ustedes creen? Bruno, ¿lo ponemos el video?
Sí.
Alright. Y les voy a dejar sobre qué va a pasar con la tormenta del día de hoy. Así que vamos ahí.
That late, it's hard to see the road in front of you, and you think it's more shallow than it actually is. All right, so here's a look at some of the rainfall totals. Punta Gorda, 17 plus inches of rain already. We've still got rain coming down out that way. Lehigh Acres, just around 14. Northport coming in at 13 inches. And even in Sanibel, where we may not be seeing some of the higher totals at the moment, they'll still receive rain And they've also received some devastating storm surge down on the barrier islands. Here's a look at the radar. So now we see the severe weather threat has shifted to the East Coast. Yesterday and the day
Como ustedes saben, compren nuestras remeras que están ahora mismo en la venta de Roblox. Los dejamos con el video del huracán ahorita mismo y volvemos en 15 minutos. Ya volvemos. Ahora les voy a dejar con este video. Ya volvemos.
into the panhandle eventually, some light rain, or as you can see, devastating conditions into central and southern Florida. Joshua?
All right, thank you, Samara. That's meteorologist Samara Theodore with the latest on the storm's track. NBC's Ellison Barber is in Tampa for us now. That's where we had intended to start the hour. We do have her now. And Ellison, before I come to you, you've been dealing with power going on and off. I tried to check to see how many people still have power in your area, and Tico's website is slammed. And earlier tonight, there was a moment that might have been connected to some of the power issues that we've had tonight. Watch.
Jesus! That just exploded.
Yeah, that was earlier tonight. Looked like a transformer, I think, that just popped. How are things now?
Yeah, that's what we thought happened too. We heard the explosion, saw the sparks. It was incredibly startling to be on the ground and to hear that. And there was an apartment building nearby that is just, except for what seems like emergency lights in the hallway, is now completely dark. Look, a lot of people in Tampa, they are looking at this weather, the rain, the wind, and they're saying, hey, this is not at all as bad as we were expecting. The hurricane turned a little bit. They are probably feeling a little bit like they can breathe a sigh of relief. But officials in this city, while they're saying they do feel like they might have gotten lucky here, they're still saying, hey, there is a lot of different broad impacts that are going to happen outside of the cone of this hurricane, from power outages to just so much rainfall that it leads to flooding, to still the potential in this area for storm surge. So they're hoping that people still recognize the severity of this situation, even though the exact track of Hurricane Ian has shifted some at this point. One of the things here that is still a concern is storm surge. We've seen images down along the Bay Area where it's pulled back entirely, the water. It's what's known as reverse storm surge. Tampa police, they sent out a notice tonight saying, hey, we have noticed a lot of people going down there to sightsee. Do not do that, because eventually that water, that has to come back. And they're still expecting the possibility here, they say, of catastrophic storm surge. So they're hoping people who are in the areas, particularly those lower lying areas where they were under mandatory evacuation orders, that if they did not leave, they stay put, because there are still so many things that could happen here. One thing, though, looking ahead, they are already making some plans within Tampa to try and assist nearby areas further down the coast should they need help. The airport over here, we were there earlier today. It's totally shut down, but they say they are already in touch and coordinating with the National Guard to potentially have a flight hub there for the National Guard, so they can then deploy resources further down the coast. Joshua?
Yeah, you mentioned Tampa PD. I was just looking on their Twitter feed. They have a video of a traffic light that came down right in front of a squad car in Ybor City as they were out on the road. So there are live wires down in Tampa right now. I got to let you go in about a minute, but it sounds like people have mostly been staying at home, inside, staying out of the storm.
Yeah. It seems like it. I mean, in the days leading up to this, we met quite a few people at gas stations who said they are lifelong Floridians, lived in Tampa for a decade, have never evacuated the storm, whether they've lived here a decade or lived here 30, 40 years, but they were this time because they were taking the possibility of storm surge so seriously. And one thing to keep in mind is the role that climate change is playing in all this, because in Tampa, you look at the sea level and it has risen 8 inches since the late 1940s. So all of that contributing here, all of it hopefully making people take it more seriously. And we did encounter a lot of people saying, hey, this time we're evacuating. We'd rather be safe than sorry. Joshua?
Got it. Thank you, Ellison. That's NBC's Ellison Barber with the latest from Tampa. All right, we're coming up on the top of the hour. A few things to remember. Treasure Coast in Central Florida, you are under a tornado watch until 1 in the morning. Conditions are favorable. Please keep an ear on your weather radio, your local station, that'd be WESH or WPTV. Please keep an ear out for that. Remember, we're going to report price gouging in the state of Florida at 866-9-NO-SCAM. The penalties are pretty severe in the state of Florida for price gouging these days. 866-9-NO-SCAM. And stay off the roads. If you call 911, they're not going to come get you till the winds die down and it's safe to help you. You can use 311 to report non-emergencies. If you call 911, it's just going to be put into a queue and they will come deal with your emergency when they can. This has been quite a storm. We're so honored that you made time to spend some of it with us and trust us for some of your information. Until we meet again, I'm Joshua Johnson. Thank you so much. Please sit tight. Our special coverage of Hurricane Ian continues here on NBC News Now.
Tonight, breaking news, a catastrophic direct hit. Hurricane Ian slamming into Florida's Gulf Coast as a devastating Category
surge can be and just how quickly it can overtake entire neighborhoods.
Then to the investigation of Russia's pipelines to Europe. Seismologists registered 2 powerful blasts in the vicinity of the leaks. Was sabotage involved?
And international singing star Shakira has been ordered to stand trial on tax fraud charges in Spain. Prosecutors are seeking millions and an 8-year prison sentence. Early today starts right now. Good morning, I'm Philip Mena.
Glad you're with us. I'm Francis Rivera. Ian will make landfall today, hitting Florida as a major hurricane. The storm's outer bands are already wreaking havoc. This video was taken in the Florida Keys, where a storm surge warning was issued overnight. Officials are warning of life-threatening conditions, including catastrophic winds and flooding.
For that initial impact, that's going to be severe. The storm surge is going to be severe. Obviously, the water and the flooding for a slow-moving storm, very severe impacts in Southwest Florida. But those impacts are going to continue going out all through the state.
There have also been at least 2 radar-confirmed tornadoes in Broward County. This video shows serious damage done to planes at a small airport north of Miami. There have been reports of at least 2 people injured by tornadoes.
About 2.5 million people live in areas that have been ordered to evacuate ahead of this storm. The governor warning overnight that the opportunity to get out of harm's way is running out. Not only is the hurricane already bearing down on the state, but some bridges will be forced to shut down. Let's get the latest on Ian's track now from meteorologist Michelle Grossman. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, guys. And this is a big storm in size, a big storm in strength. It's a Category 3 storm. It's only going to get larger. We're concerned about life-threatening storm surge, life-threatening flash flooding. We could see up to 24 inches of rain in some spots, damaging winds, and also the chance of severe storms. We're seeing tornado warnings this morning, tornado watches in effect until 5 o'clock. And we're going to see that threat with us Thursday and also Friday, so not just today. Here's the latest on Ian. We're looking at winds at 120 miles per hour. Those are sustained winds. They're gusting higher than that, even up to 150 in some spots. We're starting to feel those tropical storm force winds in Florida. It's moving northeast at 10 miles per hour. It will slow down, and we're going to see it crawl over Florida, and that's going to drop a lot of heavy rain for a few days. And keep in mind, Florida is already very saturated from the month of September, so we're adding some rainfall on top of wet grounds. 19 million at risk. We're looking at tropical storm warnings, hurricanes warnings. Where you see the red here, that is where we have a hurricane warning, and we will see that landfall later on this afternoon. Let's track it for you. A Category 4 storm later on today, 130 mile per hour winds. We're going to see this cone involving Sarasota down to Fort Myers, so Sanibel Island, also Naples. You are in the cone. This is where we're going to see the center pass. These impacts are well past this cone, though, and really the entire peninsula of Florida will
will be impacted today. We're going to see those winds continuing, the rain continuing. We'll talk all about the impacts in just a few minutes.
All right, talk to you in just a few, Michelle. Thank you.
Sure.
Meanwhile, Cuba has been left in the dark after Ian barreled through the island. This is a look now at the streets of Havana. It is an eerie scene. The only light shining here is from the car headlights. The province on the western side of the island, Pinar del Rio, was hit with the brunt of the storm. It's home to more than 500,000 people. More than 60,000 were evacuated from there and a nearby province. It's an area famous for its tobacco plantations, and there's significant flooding and damage done to infrastructure. The rations were increased for people on the island, and the government has sent out medical brigades to the impacted areas.
Meanwhile, 500,000 people in Puerto Rico are still without power after Fiona knocked out the already frail grid. Luma Energy says it has restored power to 67% of customers. Puerto Rican officials are calling on President Biden to waive the Jones Act that would allow a British ship carrying fuel to dock on the island. The centuries-old law prohibits non-U.S. ships from docking. The Biden administration says they don't have the authority to suspend it. The Puerto Rican governor and several lawmakers are asking the president to grant a federal waiver.
One of the biggest concerns on Florida shores is the life-threatening storm surge. Some areas could see up to 12 feet. NBC's Kerry Sanders explains.
The waters of the Gulf of Mexico are warm, as high as 89 degrees, a high-octane fuel for hurricanes. With a shallow seabed along the Gulf Coast, the perfect combination for catastrophic storm surge.
Shallow water is actually easier to pick up and lift and blow up onto the land than it is in deep water. And so the same wind on the west coast of Florida will have substantially greater storm surge than it would on the east coast of Florida.
I've experienced it firsthand. This is what storm surge looks like. It's a fast-moving, fast-rising flash flood with the power of the Atlantic Ocean behind it. What causes that building wall of water known as storm surge? 100-plus mile-per-hour winds whipping across the surface of the water, piled higher and higher. The storm surge combined with high tide may cause water levels as high as 10 feet above normal, overwashing beaches and potentially traveling miles inland. I'm at about 2 feet above sea level, which means a 5-foot storm surge would come in about here. A 10-foot storm surge up there. In some cases, the storm surge could wash over Florida's barrier islands.
Water does the most damage, it kills the most people, and it takes the longest to recover from.
Anyone with a mortgage in a flood zone is required to carry federal flood insurance, but wind damage is covered by your homeowner's policy. In Florida, 6 insurance companies have claimed insolvency just this year. Homeowners complain those that are still in business here have jacked up premiums.
I'd say probably about a 30% increase for myself. Others, I've seen them, rise 50%, 100%, and some have just been canceled altogether.
Very helpful information. Our thanks to Kerry for that report.
Now to the January 6th committee is postponing today's scheduled hearing after this documentary here. And it's because of the threat of Hurricane Ian, first and foremost. But this is new evidence is emerging from a documentary on Roger Stone, one of former President Trump's longtime allies. Alice Barr has the details.
In a late announcement, the January 6th committee delaying what was expected to be its final investigative hearing. It comes as we're learning of new evidence that will likely be presented. Video clips from the Danish documentary A Storm Foretold, showing longtime Trump ally Roger Stone predicting violence and saying months before the 2020 election that then President Trump would use armed guards and loyal judges to fight the results if he lost.
If the electors show up at the Electoral College, armed guards will throw them out. I'm the president. You. You're not stealing Florida. You're not stealing Ohio. I'm challenging all of it. And the judges we're going to are judges I appointed.
It comes as jury selection begins in the most high-profile case yet against those accused of attacking the Capitol on January 6th. The leader of the far-right Oath Keepers militia group, Stuart Rhodes, and 4 other members facing charges of seditious conspiracy, accused of trying to overthrow the government by force. They face up to 20 years in prison.
According to the allegations in the indictment, there were communications in advance of the attack that this was a premeditated plan to stop the certification of a presidential election.
Defense attorneys argue they were not there to storm the Capitol, but were waiting for then-President Trump to invoke the Insurrection Act. And in yet another thread, NBC News has learned leaders of the Secret Service confiscated the cell phones of 24 agents who responded to the Capitol siege as part of a criminal probe into agents' missing text messages during the time Trump supporters were overrunning the Capitol. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
All right, let's get back to Hurricane Ian and its impacts with Michelle. Hello again, Michelle.
Hi there, guys. Yeah, we have extraordinary impacts, catastrophic and life-threatening impacts in terms of storm surge, heavy rainfall, really gusty winds, and a severe weather threat. But let's start with the storm surge, because what storm surge is a wall of water. It's a wall of salt water, ocean water, that moves over dry land. You can't outrun it. So if you haven't evacuated yet, heeded the warnings, you want to do that now, because that window is really closing. It could cause widespread and destructive Gulf water inundation, coastal escape routes flooded or washed away. And we could see up to 12 feet of storm surge in some spots, especially where you see this pink here. That is right where we're expecting that landfall. We're also expecting some heavy rainfall as well, up to 24 inches in some spots. I always mention those brighter colors. Where you see the brighter colors, that's where we're expecting the heaviest rainfall. So really, in the entire peninsula of Florida, expecting some heavy rainfall. That's going to extend up into the Carolinas, also into the state of Georgia. Roads may turn into rivers of moving water, houses damaged, houses washed away, especially in those coastal communities. Again, 12 to 24 inches. So we're talking feet of rain in some spots. Of course, when you think of a hurricane, you think of those destructive winds. And that's what we're going to see. Winds gusting up to 66 miles per hour in Sarasota. That's a look at the big weather story of the day. Here's a closer look at your day ahead. All right, nice and quiet in portions of the New England area, Northeast, feeling like fall, temperatures in the 60s and 70s, and not a bad day in the South either. It's going to be warm, not as hot as we have been. Temperatures in the 80s and 90s, a hot one, though, in the Southwest. All right, guys, we're going to talk about the severe weather threat that's coming with Ian in just a few minutes.
Yeah, so many aspects to cover when it comes to this storm. We'll check in with you in a bit. Thank you, Michelle. One young girl's wish to see as many horses as possible came true at the Kentucky Derby Museum. 9-year-old Corey has a nervous system disorder that limits use of her limbs. She loves horses, so the Make-A-Wish Foundation brought her family from Florida to the Kentucky Derby Museum. She met retired thoroughbred Rita and a miniature horse named Ari. She said the trip made her feel happy and special.
Was it sabotage? Europe is investigating what it's calling attacks on a key Russian gas pipeline. We're back in 60 seconds.
You get one beautiful life to live. What are you going to do?
Bueno, esa fue toda la información de huracán Ian. Miren cómo fue. Jesus Christ.
Surge can be and just how quickly it can overtake entire.
Bueno, creo que mañana, bueno, como ustedes siempre, mañana seguimos acá en el Noticias de Roblox para saber. Vamos a continuar mañana a las 9 de la mañana o algo así, cuando me despierte o algo así, que si tengo tiempo. Vamos a seguir confirmando del huracán Ian. Hoy ya pasó a Miami y bueno, yo creo que vamos a seguir confirmando mañana. Muchas gracias, seguimos mañana.